Imagine you're 70 years old. You spent 40 years working. 40 years watching a piece of every paycheck disappear into Social Security before the money ever reached your hands. You did it without complaint, because you were promised that one day those benefits would come back to you. And now that day is here. You're retired, the checks arrive, and then, at tax time, you open a letter and discover that a portion of your Social Security benefit is being taxed. And your very first thought is the one almost everyone has in that moment. Wait, didn't I already pay taxes on this? That feeling, that quiet sense that the rules changed after the game was already over, is one of the most common and most misunderstood frustrations in all of retirement. Because most people have no idea Social Security can be taxed at all, and the ones who do usually don't understand why it happens to them, or what, if anything, they can do about it. So let me show you something most people are never taught. I'm a teacher, not your financial advisor, and nothing here is advice for your specific situation. But, by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why this tax exists, why it's quietly catching more ordinary retirees every single year, and the perfectly legal moves many people use to pay less of it. Let's start with the number that scares everyone. You've probably heard it. Up to 85% of your Social Security can be taxed. And when most people hear that, they panic. They picture losing 85% of their check. Let me put that fear to rest right now because it's wrong. It does not mean you pay an 85% tax rate on your benefits. It means that, depending on your income, up to 85% of your benefit can be counted as taxable income, and then taxed at your normal rate, like any other dollar. So if your tax rate is 12%, and 85% of your benefit gets counted, you're paying roughly 12 cents on those counted dollars, not 85. For most middle-income retirees, the actual bite lands well below the scary headline. That distinction matters, because the goal today isn't fear. It's clarity. And clarity starts with the strangest part of this whole story. A decision made over 40 years ago that's quietly reaching into your pocket today. Here's the part nobody tells you. Back in 1983, when Social Security itself was in financial trouble, Congress made a portion of benefits taxable for the first time. The pitch was simple. This would only touch wealthier retirees, so they drew the lines high. For a single person, taxes only kicked in above $25,000 of what's called combined income. For a married couple, $32,000. In 1993, they added a second tier and a higher cap. $34,000 for singles, $44,000 for couples, and that's where the up to 85% came from. Now here's the trick. Remember those four numbers, 25, 34, 32, 44,000. Write them on the wall. Because here's the question. Almost nobody asks. What happens to a fixed line when prices keep rising for 40 years? But the line never moves. Groceries went up. Gas went up. Rent, insurance, healthcare, property taxes, all up. The cost of simply living went up decade after decade. But those thresholds? They never budged. Not once. They are exactly where they were set in the 1980s and 90s. Think about what that means. A couple living on $44,000 in 1993 was comfortable. A couple living on $44,000 today is just trying to cover the basics. But the tax rules treat them the same. Because the rules froze in time while the world kept moving. If those thresholds had simply kept up with inflation, the single filer lines today would sit somewhere around 80,000 and 110,000, not 25,000 and 34,000. That's the difference between a tax aimed at the wealthy and a tax that now quietly reaches school teachers, retired electricians, and widows on modest fixed incomes. And that's why planners call this a stealth tax. Nobody ever ran a headline saying, Congress raises Social Security taxes on the middle class. They didn't have to. Inflation does the work silently, in the background, dragging a few more ordinary retirees over the line every single year. Nobody voted to raise your taxes. Time did it for them. So how do you know if this hits you? You need to understand one number the IRS uses, called combined income, and it's simpler than it sounds. You take your regular taxable income, pensions, IRA or 401k withdrawals, investment income. You add any tax-exempt interest. And then This is the part people miss. You add half of your Social Security benefit. That total is your combined income, and it's what gets measured against those frozen lines. Now watch how an ordinary life decision can spring the trap. Picture a married couple, both retired, both in their late 60s. Together they get about $48,000 a year from Social Security. They have a paid-off home, a modest IRA they barely touch, and careful habits. In a normal year, they take nothing from the IRA. So half their Social Security, $24,000, is their combined income. That's below the $32,000 line. Result? Their benefits aren't taxed at all. Then the roof starts leaking. A new one costs $22,000. They don't have that in cash, so they do the sensible thing. They pull it from the IRA. And just like that, the math changes. That $22,000 withdrawal now counts as income. Add it to half their Social Security, and their combined income jumps to about $46,000 over the $44,000 line. Suddenly, a big chunk of their Social Security becomes taxable, and their tax bill is far higher than they expected. The roof didn't make them rich. They weren't splurging. They fixed a roof. But the formula doesn't care why you took the money, only that you did. And here's a related surprise that catches people. Those tax-free municipal bonds everyone loves, their interest still counts in this formula. Tax-free doesn't mean invisible. So even income you thought was safe can quietly push you over the line, which brings us to the part that actually matters. What you can do about it. Here's the principle that changes how smart retirees think. It's not just how much income you have. It's where it comes from. Two retirees can spend the exact same amount in a year and owe wildly different taxes depending on which account the money came out of. A few of the tools people use, all completely legal. Roth accounts. Qualified withdrawals from a Roth generally don't count in that combined income formula at all. So pulling $30,000 from a Roth can leave your Social Security untouched, while pulling the same $30,000 from a traditional IRA might drag your benefits into taxable territory. Same spending, very different tax bill. Roth conversions, used carefully. This means moving money from a traditional IRA into a Roth and paying the tax now so it can come out tax-free later. There's no magic. Taxes aren't erased, they're shifted. But in the lower income years after you stop working, but before required withdrawals begin, some retirees gradually convert a little at a time. Think of it like a dimmer switch, not an on-off switch. Too much at once creates its own tax problem. Qualified charitable distributions. If you're already giving to a church or charity and you're old enough to qualify, you can send the money straight from your IRA to the charity. It can satisfy your required withdrawal without raising your income, which keeps pressure off those frozen thresholds. Health savings accounts. If you built one up, qualified medical withdrawals come out tax-favored. Useful, because healthcare costs in retirement rarely go down. I'll be honest with you, none of these is one size fits all. The right move depends on your accounts, your income, your health, your whole picture. This is exactly the kind of thing worth mapping out carefully, ideally with a professional. The point isn't to chase a perfect answer, it's to stop being surprised. Now, one recent change you need to know about, because a lot of coverage skips it. Starting with the 2025 tax year, there's a new temporary deduction for people 65 and older, an extra $6,000 per qualifying senior, on the books through 2028. Because it lowers your taxable income, it can reduce, and for some lower and middle-income retirees, even wipe out, the tax on their Social Security. But read the fine print, because it's widely misunderstood. It does not repeal the Social Security tax. The formula we just walked through is unchanged. It's temporary. It starts phasing out for higher incomes, above roughly $75,000 single, $150,000 married, and disappears entirely well above that. And it only helps if you're 65 or older, so if you claimed early and you're 62, it doesn't reach you yet. You may also have heard talk of a bill to eliminate Social Security taxes entirely. As of today, that's still just a proposal, not law. And here's the planning truth that never goes out of style. Hoping Washington fixes it is not a retirement strategy. plan around the rules that exist today. If they get better, that's a happy bonus. Step back, and you'll see this was never really about taxes. It's about predictability, about retirement feeling stable instead of full of trapdoors. Most of the frustration around this isn't the money itself. It's the feeling that nobody explained the rules clearly enough before retirement began, that there were formulas running quietly in the background that could reshape your tax bill because of one ordinary decision, like fixing a roof. But here's the good news, and it's the whole reason I made this for you. Confusion doesn't have to stay confusion. Once you understand how the system works, the anxiety shrinks. You stop reacting at tax time and start planning before it. You learn why the source of $1 matters as much as the size of it. You turn surprise into strategy. So when you're 90 years old, looking back, I hope you remember this wasn't about earning more or spending less. It was about understanding how the pieces fit. So you kept more of what you spent a lifetime building and slept a little easier doing it. Understanding gives you options. Options give you confidence. And confidence is what retirement is supposed to feel like. I'll see you in the next one.